live. Okay, so let's get into the game design today. Okay. Okay. Fun note. I guess I can tell anyone who watches this, since no one watches this, someday they might. I might get fired from my job, which would be really scary. But at the same time, if I do get fired from my job, maybe that's good. Maybe I spend a lot more time figuring this out and I actually get the job I want. That's always the hope. So, this is a good time for me to focus on getting my game designed and not worry about other things going on that are not so fun. Full rundown of what happened is last Wednesday I had a bad day. I've been there for 2 years, right? So sometimes I have a bad day. I work from home. So I'm sitting in my house and I'm not making all the calls. I'm not making any calls. Normally I'm supposed to make like at least 35 calls. Used to be you could get away. Like they'd be like, all right, had a bad day. But then like starting in the past month, it's been, the company's taken a very, very corporate turn. So it's very different. And they saw that. They had my manager, who's a nice guy. They had him come in and basically accused me of time theft. And so now they're going to look into it and they're going to find out that I go into dispositions that are not for making calls sometimes when I'm like doing emails or texts or whatever for work. And they'll probably fire me for it. And that is what it is. It is what it is. So let's get started on this stuff. Tube. ARPG. I bet you it'll come up since I've watched his videos. It's surprising though. His do not come up for some reason. There he is. Like, it must just be like his way of doing things because he's got excellent videos. And we are on not this landscape.
Answer is
landscape
yes.
Materials. Here we are. Okay. So yeah, I'll leave him pulled up and we'll just get started. Oh, wait, and I need to pull up my thing here and pull up. Let's see. Oh, while you guys were gone, I did do a couple things just to like make these rivers a little bit different. I noticed that what I had done had really messed with the middle section. So I fixed it. It's up on its hill here on its own, and then it's got all these rivers around it. Actually, I still don't like this. So before I even start the videos, let's do this. And then remember, we hold down shift and drag, and it'll kind of pull the terrain down around something. And I just want to do that all the way around my central thing here, so it looks kind of like a real island, some of it's just too hilly for me. Yeah, like this area, right? You don't want to see that. Yeah, this looks better, right? I think. Probably want to make this a little deeper too. And this. And then obviously we need to have the connection points low enough. See, but like this one just needs to come in on this side. This stuff can all go down a little bit to be like more around this side, but really we don't want anything to come in from this side. So I'm actually going to go to flatten. I found out this tool's pretty useful. You can do this. I mean, I showed it in a previous episode too, but like, look at that. It just kind of flattens it out and makes it more uniform so you can see this is going to, see like right here, I don't want it to go over here. I don't even know why that's all lowered, just because I misclicked. So there you go. That looks like a good river. Let's work on this one too. I'm actually finding this one really not good. Like, that's way too shallow. You can't even see it. Is that really where it's supposed to be from? Yes. What the heck happened here? Okay, so we go back to sculpt. We hold down shift. And I'm just gonna take it along here. Make it deeper. And you can see, like, it's just not great, the depth of this thing. Hold on, let me get over here. This part's really deep, though. So let's see. Let's put this, just make sure this really has its riverbed kind of filled. Yeah. Oops, I just did the wrong button there. Okay. There we go. Okay. So that side looks good now. And then, yeah, let's make sure this all lines up. Don't worry, we are going to get to that video a little bit today. If not now, at the night session. If you come back for all this entertainment at 9 o'clock, I will do it then, if not now. Okay, I have to take a break. Okay. False alarm. My oldest child needed a tissue. That's what all that was about. Okay. So, welcome to my life. That's how things go around here. I don't know what's going on here. I don't really need all of this space. I feel like it's too much. I guess I'll leave it. It can be cool. See, another area where I'm like, maybe a little bit lower would be good here. But really, it is just this one going into there. I hope I'm not like doing too much on these riverbeds, but I don't think I am. That's the thing. Well, maybe, because like if it's, these are all so shallow in my opinion. Maybe I need to make the tool strength higher. You know, maybe just do this and then. Let's just hope it works, honestly, at this point. Okay, gonna go back to the video.
So we're going to create something called a material function.
It's not even a real level.
So if you minimize this and you go back into our content drawer, we're going to navigate back to, if I exit out of this, we're going to navigate back to our MS presets in that garden landscape material. And we're going to create a material function here. So if you right click and go under materials, the second option is material function. And we're going to call this material function our MF garden landscape material function. So you can double click to go into that. And I'm just going to consolidate some of these tabs up here. We don't need our ground moss anymore. We don't need our macro variation light. All right. So material function, we'll click to go into that. And I'm just going to consolidate some of these tabs up here. We don't need our ground moss anymore. We don't need our macro variation light. All right. So material function, how does it work? Well, we can take all of that logic that we have under our garden landscape material and we can put it into this one material function. And then that's all going to be collapsed under a single node every time we use it for a different material in our main material. So let's do this. Let's highlight everything again, similar to what we did.
Okay. Open this. Highlight it all. Control C.
For our moss material. And make sure you also get the specular there. And then Control C to copy. If I come over to get the specular there.
Oh, I made it 0. It wants me to do like a, what is it, a shift 1 or a 1 or one click. I mean, I think this is probably fine. I didn't probably need that because the specular was already 0 on mine. His doesn't give him the option to set
And we
the
use it for a
specular.
different
Must
material
be
in
a
our
new
main
thing.
material. So let's do this. Let's highlight everything again, similar to what we did for our moss material. And make sure you also get the specular there. And then Control C to copy. If I come over to our material function, we're going to do the same thing. Control V paste. And I just got to drag this over, make sure that it's lined properly. And so now the question is, how do we connect this up to our output, to what our material function is actually going to do? And for that, we need to have an intermediate node called a material attributes node. So if you drag off a pin from here and you search for material attributes, and we can make material attributes. And so that's creating a giant node with every possible selection into a material. We don't need all of those, right? So we just need to copy what we've got for our garden landscape right here. So we got our base color, our specular, our roughness, our normal, and our ambient occlusion. So I'll go back and emulate that here. All right, so now that we've connected that up.
Okay, so you do want us to do that. Make something.
So if you drag off a pin from here and you search for material attributes, and we can make material attributes. And so that's creating a giant node with every possible selection into a material. We don't need all of those, right? So we just need to copy what we've got for our garden landscape right here. So we got our base color, our specular, our roughness, our normal, and our ambient occlusion. So I'll go back and emulate that here.
Base color goes here. Specular, ambient occlusion. And then you got that one going to roughness. Oops. Control C. Bring this one up.
All right, so now that we've connected that up, our next part of the function that we have to do is we have to switch out these texture samples. So in our material, the texture samples are basically static, meaning they're just set to be a given texture. And with the function, we want to be able to reuse this function with any material, meaning any texture sample. And that's for our base color, it's for our normal, but it's also for our ambient occlusion. So we have to use something called an input. Basically, there's going to be inputs from our main garden landscape material into the function, and then the function is going to actually output the actual material. So how do we do that? How do we turn these into inputs? Well, if you right-click and you search for input, you'll get function input here, but landscape material into the function.
Where do we get normal? Because we still need normal on this, right? So that must be another thing. Oh boy, I need to... This one's the roughness. This one's the normal.
Function, and then the function is going to actually output the actual material. So how do we do that? How do we turn these into inputs? Well, if you right-click and you search for input, you'll get function input here. And by default, the input is a vector 3, and that corresponds to the RGB, the 3 different channels over here. But for the main base color, we've also got an alpha, right? So we actually have to change this to instead be a vector 4. And so what I'm going to do then is I'm going to connect the main vector 4 up to the multiply here, but we just need to get that alpha channel, that 4th channel from here. So to do that, I'm going to drag off a pin and I'm going to search for break, and we're going to break out the float 4 components.
And then break float 4 components. This is
into 4 different, like you see here. And then we can just get the alpha channel and connect that up.
Alpha to B. But it's not really doing what
And
I
that
want it
basically
to.
replaces our texture sample here. And then we could do the same thing for our other 2 inputs. So our normal map, that's just a vector 3 input, so I could search for
input. And I mean, hopefully he's helping you guys, because I don't understand
Input,
what we're doing.
function input, vector 3 is just
We
fine.
need it to be
Connect that up.
Instead,
Delete.
Alert.
That out. And the same thing for our ambient occlusion. Now the last thing, just so we know what we're... that up.
Hold on.
Delete that out. And the same thing for our ambient occlusion. Now the last thing, just so we know what we're actually inputting, what these are doing, we need to rename them. So over here on the left, I can change this to AO, short for ambient.
AO for ambient occlusion.
Occlusion. This one I'm going to change to normal.
For normal textures.
And this one I'm going to change to our base color. And I'll
And this is going to be base.
save that. All right, so now that we have our function, how do we actually use that function? How do we reference it in our main material? So if I navigate over to our garden landscape material, so this is the really dangerous part. So what I want you to do is I want you to just delete out everything in this material, completely wipe it fresh. And then we're going to call our function. So how do we get our function inside our material? Well, if you right click anywhere on the material and you search for function call, we have an option for a material function call. And if you have that function open already, it's going to pull that in automatically. But you could change that material function. If you're calling a different function, you could change that right over here in the details panel for the material.
Okay. I need to save it first, I think. Wait, that's not how you do it.
Then we're going to call our function. So how do we get our function inside our material? Well, if you right click anywhere on the material and you search for function call, we have an option for a material function call. And if you have that function open already, it's going to pull that in automatically. But you could change that material function. If you're calling a different function, you could change that right over here in the details panel for the material. But here's the problem. So we've got a 1-pin result, and our material over on the right, this is expecting all these different pins. So how do we connect one to multiple? Well, I can select our garden landscape material node here. And on the left-hand side, there's this feature called Use Material Attributes. And basically, that's a different format for the material. If you check that, it basically collapses all the nodes into a single node, and then you can connect that up. All right, but then we get an error saying, uh-oh, we don't have any inputs. We're missing our normal, our AO, and our base color. So how do we get those as inputs to put into our function? Well, let's go back to our content drawer. Let's go back to our content and then our Megascans folder, surfaces, clover, patches on grass. We get these three again by holding shift.
I see. Okay. As much as I don't understand, I sort of understand. Alright. So we take these three, because we need to plug these all into their spots. So like, if I were to, that's base. This is normal. So this is normal. This is base. And this is AO. Oops. Apply.
And drag them in. Now we got our 1, 2, 3. So I'm just going to separate these out a little bit and make sure the right things align to the right thing. So we've got to have our normal up top, our AO in the middle, and our base color at the bottom. And remember, make sure for your base color, because we have 4 different components, we got to connect the RGBA up to that. So we got to connect the RGBA up to base color, and then for the other 2, it's just
And ta-da!
RGB, because that's a 3-item.
I don't know why we're doing this, but it did work.
And there we go. So now we could save, and look at that. Our material just loaded automatically, and that's how we know that it's working. So the way this is working is we got our 3 base textures, right? We have our normal, our AO, and our base color. Those are feeding into the function, the material function that we just created via these inputs. And then that's doing the entire logic that we just did previously, emulating the moss material. And then finally, that's being put out to a result and going into our material attributes node for our main material here.
Okay, so quick overview of that for the simple people like me. I think what he's trying to say is you can come in, I'm streaming. You know. Hi, this is my wife. She probably doesn't want to be on the screen. It's okay, no one's actually here. It's fake. Okay. Alright. So basically what you got going on is you have your different texture samples are feeding into this, like any function is just something you can reuse and repeat. So it's a bunch of code in a code thing, but this is blueprints, but same difference. So you can input these 3 things into certain spots on the code, which you see those ones go into where we set them up over here. This is one of those, and then you saw the other 2 earlier. And then it'll bring it all into these, and then this is how it computes all of the information, and so it keeps this really simple. And I'm gonna guess there's another reason we're doing it, because I wouldn't bother. Why make an instance? But he's going to be smart.
And if we go back to our landscape, we just take a look briefly and make sure it's working just fine. So now we're at an exciting point, because really we're ready to get additional materials so that we can begin setting those up to be able to paint those across our landscape. So let's go back into Quixel Bridge, and I'm going to show you the materials that I'm going to use for my landscape, but feel free to pick any materials you like. So like in the last episode, you'll need to sign into Quixel Bridge in the top right corner here. And then once you do that, navigate to Surfaces on the left. And I want to go over what makes a good material for painting a landscape and what I think makes not so good material. So if you search for something like stone, I'll just contrast a good example with what I consider a not so good example. So something like this here, this rocky forest floor, this is going to tile really easily, and it's going to be really evident across the landscape because you see these formations and you're going to recognize those right away, that it's repeating those in a regular pattern. Whereas something like, well, if I select this forest floor, that's much less obvious because there isn't that obvious landmark that you could see is repeating. Something like this, like construction gravel, that's even better. That's never going to tile because it's just a bunch of rocks. So keep that in mind in terms of what materials you choose for your landscape. You could pick some with some rocks and stuff. You just need to use a lot more comprehensive techniques to create randomization effects. So now what we're going to do is we're going to download 5 additional materials for our landscape. And I've gone ahead and started a spreadsheet that you can find in the description below. And basically, I'm going to keep updating this spreadsheet with all the materials, all the assets, all the rocks, foliage, etc. that we end up using as I progress through this game. Because I want all this to be available to you and you know exactly how to follow along. And to open the spreadsheet, you could download a free program like OpenOffice and you should be able to load it just fine. What you'll find in this spreadsheet is I've actually put in the codes for each material. So the way you get a code for a material is if you right-click on a material, you can copy the asset ID, and then you can paste it. And that's what I basically did for the spreadsheet, so you know you're getting the precise materials that we're searching for here. And so our first material is this mossy ground here. And when you select a material, in the bottom right-hand corner, you see some options here. So we could see the quality at which we can download it, whether or not it's currently downloaded, and then we can add it to our...
Let's see. Let's just go ahead and do that. Mossy ground.
Current project. So I'm going to download all of these materials for our landscape at high quality. We could get highest quality, which is an 8K texture, but I don't think it's necessary quality.
Why is it not?
So you could paste it. And that's what I basically did for the spreadsheet. So you know you're getting the precise materials that we're searching for here. And so our first material is this mossy.
Hmm. It's like brown. Now I have to look for it. Where's Waldo? Alright, mossy ground. There's that one. I feel like that's not it. Is it? No, that's not it. It must be possible to make multiple mossy ground. Yeah, this one looks similar to it, right? That's gotta be it. That's it. For
Ground
sure.
here. And when you select a material, in the bottom right hand corner you see some options here. So we could see the quality at which we can download it, whether or not it's currently downloaded, and then we can add it to our current project. So I'm going to download all of these materials for our landscape at high quality. We could get highest quality, which is an 8K texture, but I don't think it's necessary for the landscape. And the reason is that our camera is always going to be roughly like at least 4 or 5 feet
And that's
away
the end
from
of
our
the
landscape,
stream,
because
I